Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Spacing Out. I'm Jason McClellan.
And I'm Maureen Elsberry, and we're back. Welcome to the 111th episode of Spacing Out.
Pretty exciting, and this is the first episode we've done under Rogue Planet. If you haven't watched Spacing Out before, Spacing Out's a show that Maureen and I created, when was it? Probably 2012, I want to say? Maybe 2012. It's a show we did and we created while we were both at a UFO media company that we both helped start called Open Minds. Neither of us are with Open Minds anymore, and after some finagling and discussions, we managed to get Spacing Out back. So that's why we're bringing it back. Well, that's part of the reason we're bringing it back. That's why we're able to bring it back. But we love this show as much as hopefully you love this show and or will learn to love this show. So we're excited to bring Spacing Out to you again.
And while our format's a little different now, Jason and I are currently in different countries. Normally we'll just be in different states. So we're not able to be in the same studio together, though we promise you we will in the future, and we'll be filled with investigations and all sorts of fun, cool content. But for now, at least, I can say that we're here to get you caught up on the news. So here are some of the space, UFO, and paranormal headlines making the rounds recently.
It's Jason and Maureen, totally awesome. Here's the food. Here's the food.
Well, all news, good or bad, is better with a drink in hand, at least as far as we're concerned. So, Maureen, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking a random Verdejo. It's white wine here locally from Spain. This particular one is not very good, but I had trouble getting anything because it was a surprise holiday that I didn't know about today. So all the stores were closed.
Well, I am drinking something I just happened to see in the store, and it called to me. It's EY Mars Whiskey, and obviously because it's Mars Whiskey, that is reason enough for me to drink it, but it's actually quite smooth, quite delicious. It's a blended whiskey. They call it a bourbon-inspired whiskey, and the distiller is Mars Whiskey, so I naturally love it, but it is fantastic.
Man, you had a way fancier booze introduction than I did, but cheers.
The private space industry continues to make advances at an incredible rate. You might remember that back in April of 2016, an expandable module from Bigelow Aerospace was attached to the International Space Station.
The Bigelow Expandable Activity Module, or BEAM for short, is a habitat that expands when it's installed at its destination, and it provides 565 square cubic feet of space for astronauts to live and work.
The original plan was to jettison BEAM from the ISS after a 2-year testing period, but after nearly a year and a half, it looks like BEAM might be sticking around.
NASA's currently exploring options with Bigelow Aerospace to keep BEAM attached to the ISS to use as a storage room of sorts, while also allowing Bigelow Aerospace to use the module for testing new technology.
Bigelow Aerospace is a leading company in the private space race. News magazine show 60 Minutes aired an interview with Bigelow Aerospace founder Robert Bigelow on May 28th of this year. 60 Minutes reporter Lara Logan spoke with Bigelow about Bigelow Aerospace, its partnerships with NASA, and the company's incredible inflatable habitats. And she also broached the subject of UFOs and extraterrestrials, a subject with which Bigelow is extremely familiar and passionate.
Logan asked Bigelow if he believes in aliens, and his response was,
I'm absolutely convinced. That's all there is to it.
Digging deeper, she asked Bigelow if he believes UFOs have come to Earth.
There has been and is an existing presence, an ET presence.
Being such a prominent figure in the private space industry, and one who has contacts with NASA, Logan asked,
Is it risky for you to say, in public that you believe
I
in
don't give a
UFOs
damn.
and aliens?
I don't care.
You don't worry that some people will say, did you hear that guy? He sounds like he's crazy.
I don't care.
Why not?
It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to change reality of what I know.
Bigelow then brought up the fact that he has personally spent millions of dollars investigating UFOs and other paranormal subjects. Logan then shifted her extraterrestrial-themed questions to contact.
Do you imagine that in our space travels we will encounter other forms of intelligent life?
You don't have to go anywhere.
You can find it here.
Yeah.
Without blinking an eye, Bigelow explained, it's just like right under people's noses. Oh my gosh, wow.
A new telescope could help scientists detect alien life on a nearby exoplanet.
The Exolife Finder, or ELF telescope, will reportedly be the world's first telescope designed to create surface maps of nearby exoplanets. It's designed to see exoplanets up to 120 trillion miles away, or 24 light years away from Earth.
The telescope will be able to detect energy signatures of life, or life's likely chemical fingerprints, in the atmosphere, things like water, oxygen, methane, and ozone. ELF will also be able to detect photosynthetic biopigments on a planet's surface. ELF sounds cool, but it doesn't exist yet. The group behind the ambitious project, the Planets Foundation, is working to make it happen, though.
This group is a non-profit organization of professors, astrophysicists, engineers, entrepreneurs, and scientists from around the world. The Planets Foundation has turned to crowdfunding to raise money to construct a world prototype. The Kickstarter campaign page features more details about the plans for ELF. Quote, the first target will be Proxima b. In only a few months after ELF is completed, we will know if there is life on this nearest exoplanet. We will also learn whether there are Earth-like planets around Alpha Centauri, A and B, and all other nearby stars within a few dozen light years away from the Sun. We will learn if we have neighbors, big or small.
If and when the project comes to fruition, the plan is to build the ELF telescope in Chile's Atacama Desert. For more information about the project, check out the Planets Foundation's website at www.planets.life.
Well, Jason, I don't know about you, but it's too bad that this is not extraterrestrial booze. If you want to know why, I'll tell you.
Yeah?
A drunk man was picked up for public intoxication in Casper, Wyoming, and he told officers that he was from the year 2048 and was sent back in time to warn the citizens of an impending alien invasion. He asked to speak to the president of the town. Of course, they did not arrange that meeting. And he claims that the reason he was able to time travel was because the extraterrestrials filled him up with alcohol. This is the greatest excuse I've ever heard for being drunk in public. I should have used it myself in years past, but very creative. But there was a small glitch, so he claims that he was supposed to come back to the year 2018, and he showed up in 2017. So this could be the key to interstellar travel, or time travel on its own, or he's just full of shit. And I think we know what the real answer is.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's cool that you can time travel if aliens fill your body with alcohol, but if they send you to the wrong year, maybe the aliens should not consume said alcohol while working on this time travel procedure.
Yep.
You know, we're seeing more of these stories, somewhat related stories like this. People claiming outlandish stories about an extraterrestrial war or hostile extraterrestrials and here to warn people or whatever. Remember back, we talked about this story on one of our mini podcasts, but Kyle Odom, I think it was back in March of 2016. This is a guy who was arrested in Idaho after he shot a pastor 6 times, but claimed that he killed several other people too because they were evil aliens and they were controlling his mind. He called them amphibious humanoids from Mars or something like that. But said they were speaking with him telepathically and trying to convince him to become a sex slave and all these other crazy things. And so he went to Washington and threw some stuff over the White House fence to try to get a flash drive of information to the president. But then he also said that the president was under extraterrestrial control and all this stuff. But, these are stories that aren't original. We've heard them before, but thanks to 24-hour news and social media, we're hearing more about these crazy things. But you and I have talked about this before, Maureen. Like, what if something like this were true? What if one of these cases, or any of these cases, were genuine? These people were trying to say, hey, look, I'm here to warn you about an alien invasion, or aliens are controlling me, and I'm trying to warn you that they're controlling our government. How could you ever know that it's true? How could anybody convince anybody of something so absurd like that? Like, it would be a futile attempt, I think, because obviously you hear something like that, you're all, whew, that's crazy. That guy's been drinking the extraterrestrial alcohol.
I think it's the whole stigma of the boy who cried wolf. If this ever was to be something that somebody actually had some real information in such a very far out there fashion, nobody would believe them, because we've heard all these stories from people who are mentally ill or drunk or on drugs, or some people that just believe it to be true and it might not be. I'm not to judge whether or not reptilians are jumping over fences to control the president. I mean, to be honest, there's scarier stuff going on our planet right now, so I don't think people would put as much weight into it because we've got bigger fish to fry. I mean, seriously, bring in the extraterrestrial invasion for all I care. Take me away.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are saying that now. Please take me. All right, I want to talk to you briefly about this new telescope. Over the years, we've talked about several new telescopes that, sound incredibly awesome. Being the space geeks we are, they're incredibly exciting. And from an astrobiology standpoint, it's incredibly exciting when you have these really intelligent and, high-tech tools that are being implemented for the specific purpose of looking for extraterrestrial life. It's really exciting. I'm glad to see more, in the works, but we know that plenty of people who will watch this show are going to be vocal and tell us, like they always do, thanks guys, that who cares? They're already here. Why are we looking? Why are we looking, Maureen? Why does it matter?
Well, it absolutely matters. And no matter if you think that aliens have been visiting Earth for millions of years, or you think you've been abducted and you want to share this information with the world and you think you have the absolute truth for everyone, that's not going to be concrete evidence enough for most people out there. We need some scientifically backed information for it to be easily digestible for the general public. So this disclosure or confirmation of life, even if you know that life is out there and has been visiting Earth, is not good enough. I'm sorry. We need more generalized information. And so that's why these telescopes and scientific studies are so important, because we're getting closer to being able to find more microbial life or maybe intelligent life out there. And when that happens, we're going to have these privatized space companies and NASA and other aeronautical government organizations investing more money in searching these other planets and in finding out more information about just what is out there. Do we have intelligent neighbors? Are they like us? Are they different? Are they octopuses? Are they, what are these life forms? Or where are they? Who are they? So it's a really exciting time, and that's why we already know they're here, just isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, I think all efforts, in the search for extraterrestrial life are worthwhile. Whether you can look at it from so many different angles, but we're talking about, from a believer or, pro UFO / extraterrestrial or, the UFO audience perspective, looking at disclosure and getting the world to know that extraterrestrials visit here and are here and whatever that belief might be. You can't just come at the general public and say, I've been abducted by an alien, or my neighbor's an alien, or our government is controlled by aliens, or I'm a hybrid alien. Like, that may be true, but people aren't going to believe it. And it's a lot for people to take in all at once. So when you have mainstream beliefs that are backed by mainstream science and something conflicts with that or challenges it, you've got to take things in baby steps. Little baby steps are what is going to allow people to open up their minds, consider new possibilities, and explore those things for themselves. So you have to give information like this to people in bite-sized pieces, and obviously the thing that's easy to swallow for most mainstream public is information provided by mainstream science. So whatever that information might be, that's a route to go that will open the minds of a lot of people to explore the possibilities. But from a completely different angle, just look at this as anything else in life that we research. Just because we discovered a lizard a long time ago, we don't stop looking for lizards. I think it was in the last couple of weeks, or maybe even the last week, depending on when this show airs, that 12 new species of gecko were discovered. We're discovering new things all the time right here on our planet. And you don't see scientists going, oh, a lizard. We already found a lizard a long time ago. Who cares? We're done looking at lizards. We don't do that. We continue looking and learning new things all the time. So even if there is an extraterrestrial living next to you, even if you are a hybrid extraterrestrial, that's cool. But we don't just then hang up everything and go, done with aliens, who cares, old news. At least in my opinion. I think the exploration continues, and we're always looking for what else is out there. Just because you discover an extraterrestrial doesn't mean you know everything about every extraterrestrial that's everywhere in the universe. The universe is pretty big.
Yeah, and unfortunately, people do. I get emails and comments all the time about people thinking they know everything, or saying, hey, look, this researcher guy is going to reveal the truth about everything. And if you think you know everything about every extraterrestrial species out there, if you know who they are, what their motives are, and you're going to be able to tell the whole world, so everyone should think of you as a prophet, that person is full of shit, and you should not trust them. People, if a lot of these people actually believe that they do know all of this information, and that's fine. They're allowed to believe what they want to, but you should not believe them. I try to be respectful and say you're entitled to your opinion, and but I highly recommend that people actually do research and look into various viewpoints. Don't trust just one person. Proxima B, I went to a presentation by one of the scientists greatly involved in this, and they called it the pale red dot for so long. And so it's exciting that ELF, if this is developed, may be able to find life that close to us. So, well, he did say that it's probably unlikely. This planet is located in the habitable zone, so the potential for maybe some surprises there it's exciting. This is a really exciting time in science and in space exploration. What about Bigelow?
Always love when Bigelow's in the news, and we've talked about Robert Bigelow for years, and he's a polarizing figure, certainly in the UFO community. There are plenty of people who have written him off and think he's some nefarious character who's hoarding information for himself and, in cahoots with aliens or in possession of alien technology and won't share it with people. As with everything, that's possible. But I don't know that. But what I do know is that here's a rich guy who spent a lot of his personal fortune investing in a topic that, we certainly are very interested in, and he is clearly very passionate about. If every rich guy spent his money investigating paranormal stuff, that'd be pretty rad. We'd probably have a lot more answers. Certainly money much better spent than buying a yacht or something. At least in my opinion. I mean, yachts are cool, but anyway, Robert Bigelow, I admire the heck out of the guy. I've said it for years, and I'll continue saying it. I would love to sit down with Robert and have a drink and talk some aliens and other strange stuff. But he's doing incredible stuff in private space. He's going to make a moon base happen, which is pretty rad. And his own private space station and stuff. Of course, people also think that he's doing it for secret evil reasons, to take select people off-world when the Earth is destroyed so these elite can live in their secret space hotel. But
I'm still trying to get to be one of those elite chosen people. Please take me to the Moon Hotel.
Again, maybe, but probably not. But the guy is doing some awesome stuff. He is a pioneer in the modern day space race, and I am always excited when Bigelow Aerospace is doing new things. I think they, partnering with other leaders like SpaceX, are going to accomplish incredible things. And again, Maureen, you and I have talked about this before, but I do think that the discovery of extraterrestrial life is really going to come first from somebody like an Elon Musk from SpaceX or Robert Bigelow from Bigelow Aerospace.
Absolutely. I have to admit a kind of huge space crush, I would say, on Elon Musk. Not a romantic crush, more on a crush on the technology he's developing and I think inventing. Well, and the people behind the face of Elon Musk also, the technology that's going to, these shuttles that are going to be able to get us from place to place so quickly that we'll actually be able to get real things done.
Yeah, there's so much exciting stuff happening in space right now, and a lot of it is, I don't want to diminish what NASA's doing. A lot of great people at NASA and exciting things going on there, especially when you're talking about some of my favorite worlds in our solar system, like Titan and Enceladus. Some awesome programs going on there. But NASA aside, SpaceX is just, and Bigelow Aerospace too, and other private space companies are just making this such an incredible time right now.
So in the past, spacing out has primarily been focused on UFOs, space exploration, the search for extraterrestrial life. But now that we've relaunched the show under Rogue Planet, we're going to be exploring also a bunch of other paranormal subjects. So we'll talk about Bigfoot, ghosts, cryptozoology, cryptids, the whole gambit. And we got to kind of get a jump start on this in July. We were asked to speak at Denver Comic-Con once again. It's my third year. Jason, I think you're second. And we spoke on a bunch of panels, but one was specifically Rogue Planet sponsored, and that was called Real Life X-Files, where Jason and I discussed real life investigations, horror stories sort of the paranormal, conspiracy a little bit, all sorts of fun topics, frightened some children. But the panel overall we felt was incredible.
It was incredible. I couldn't believe the turnout. There were people turned away, sadly, from the panel because the room was max capacity. They had this spillover waiting room for people who were queued up, waiting to get in. And then when they got in, the room was filled and standing room only, and people were turned away. That's how excited people were for this panel. And obviously, we assumed that these poor misled people were assuming that David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson were going to be there, but we were pleasantly surprised that that was not the case. These people were there to listen to the stories we had to tell, and a very engaged audience. So it was a really rad time. But we thought we would share with you some of the highlights from our Real X-Files panel.
So Jason and I are both obviously huge X-Files fans as well.
And there are a few differences from Mulder and Scully and us. Again, Eric said we have been referred to as Scully and Scully, sometimes in a negative way because people are unhappy we're debunking stories. However, the differences are we've never worked for the FBI or the government to our knowledge. Some people have accused us of so. And there is no love triangle here. Jason is happily married, and I am happily not married to Jason, no offense. A lot of people have this common misperception that governments don't actually investigate UFOs, and it's completely false. Outside of the US, there are tons of actually global investigation units that are official government organizations. Correct, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, the government has a huge, very long history of being involved in UFOs, and frankly, a lot about what we know of UFOs and the UFO lore was started by the government. I mean, it's kind of perfect that we're talking about this today because this very weekend, right now, they're celebrating the 70th anniversary of the Roswell UFO incident in Roswell, New Mexico. That's taking place right now. So, speaking about Roswell, you know, and we just celebrated the Kenneth Arnold anniversary too, the first UFO sighting in the modern UFO era. But Roswell, we can talk about Roswell, that really started, I guess, the whole government conspiracy thing where UFOs are related, and the whole thing where governments are painted as the bad guys. They're hiding things from us, the big cover up when it comes to UFOs. The Air Force did that themselves because with Roswell, they're the ones who put out the press release that said, we recovered a crash saucer. They did that. That wasn't UFO weirdos coming out and saying, oh, the government found a UFO. No, the Air Force said that. So they took that and then started covering it up and changed that story up until just a few years ago. Story after story after story, new explanations for what happened in Roswell, and we still don't actually know. But as far as UFO investigation goes, that same year really spawned the government's official investigations into UFOs, starting with,
Project Sign?
Yeah, they did Sign, and Sign was interesting. That was their first really official investigation into UFOs. This is done by the US Air Force. And surprisingly, they concluded, sort of, that some of the UFOs they couldn't identify, the most likely explanation was something of extraterrestrial origin. That's what the government came up with. That was their conclusion, that we probably had extraterrestrial spacecraft flying in our airspace. Well, that didn't go over so well with some people in Washington. So some higher ups decided to then start another project called Project Grudge. And the name is very telling because they had a strict mandate right away that they were supposed to take all UFO reports that they got, spin them, and make UFOs seem absolutely ridiculous. Ridicule the people who were reporting them and put the story out to the media that this is just ridiculous, goofy stuff, don't take it seriously. That was their official mandate, and that's what Project Grudge did. Well, people from the Pentagon took offense to that, and they said, guys, we really need to figure out what's going on here. If we've got stuff flying around in our airspace, that's kind of freaky, we need to figure it out. So that's where Project Blue Book started, and that's probably the most well-known official government investigation into UFOs. And, you know, they didn't really do a thorough investigation. There was already some extreme bias going into that. A lot of the people involved with Project Grudge were also involved with Blue Book. And a lot of the people leading Project Blue Book got frustrated with the whole exercise because it was a futile exercise. They felt that the decision higher up had already been made, that let's kind of brush UFOs under the table, nothing to see here, move along. So speaking specifically about files the government has related to UFOs and other strange things, but specifically to UFOs, it's interesting because in the past, 5, 6, 7 years, we've seen a flood of releases of UFO files from really all of our departments, so from the CIA, the FBI, the Air Force. These guys have all independently investigated UFOs, and these files are available to the public And the CIA, especially with the revival of the X-Files, tried to capitalize on it last year when they published some of their X-Files and said, see what's in our real X-Files.
If you want to read 80,000 pages of really boring text,
it's pretty
be
boring.
my guest.
Yeah, and the FBI has a digital reading room. They call it the Vault, I think, where you can go and type in UFO and find their files too. Of course, we have no idea if they've actually released all the UFO files, probably not, and certainly not good stuff. But how many of you saw just the last week about the UK Ministry of Defense's UFO files? Okay, so the MOD, the Ministry of Defense, actively investigated UFOs for a long period of time. They had something they called the Flying Saucer Working Party, and through that they developed the UFO desk. They had something, a post called the UFO desk, where they had a team assigned to actively receive UFO reports and investigate those reports. And over the past several years, they've gone through a process spawned by a Freedom of Information request. They've released in batches their UFO files. And they've claimed several times that this is all we've got, it's all out there, there you go, stop bugging us. But then a year goes by and they're all, oh, by the way, we found more files, we'll be leaking those to you very soon. And that's been a slow and ongoing process, but they've gotten a lot of flack for it too, because of various things of certain specific time periods conveniently missing from those files. And one case in particular that was investigated heavily by the government was something they call the Britain's Roswell?
Britain's Roswell, the Rendlesham Forest incident, which involved a lot of U.S. Air Force. And they were stationed over there kind of on loan in the base, and it was late December, and they 1980. They saw a bright light in the sky, went out there to investigate. It was a multi-day event. So basically, I'll make the story short. The airmen kind of got close to this object, and they said there was all this strange, like, hieroglyphic markings around it. And one of the men, there's tape recorder evidence too from a colonel. One of the men got close, and he apparently suffered all this health problems now, like a heart defect. And his doctor says it was because he was exposed to a high level of radiation. And so he thinks it's from this UFO that he encountered, and he went through all this red tape. So the government was refusing to give him his medical files, like, we're not going to give you coverage to say, like, oh, you are sick because you saw a UFO. And it was a huge mess. And he eventually did get John McCain from Arizona to get his status enlisted, showing that he was active. They eventually said, okay, yeah, we think this was from something you experienced on the base, so we're going to give you full medical coverage. So he said that's the government admitting that UFOs are real, or extraterrestrial in nature, I should say.
The military did find elevated levels of radiation in that area, and it got even weirder because there were multiple teams that went out to investigate, and things were seen on multiple nights. This was an ongoing thing, and there was weird lights in the sky that were dripping like molten substance from the sky, and even shooting lasers at people. That's freaky. Like, hostile UFOs are really fascinating to me and really scary, because we have many documented cases that were investigated by various government bodies of hostile UFOs, these lights in the sky that just like zoom around and then shoot lasers and burn people. And that happened in the Rendlesham case. But there was another case that happened in 1977 in a small Brazilian island called Colares. And this was a case where thousands of people in Colares witnessed UFOs. They called them chupa chupas because they thought that these balls of light and shooting these lasers, they were sucking their blood. But thousands of people saw them. Mayors from around the entire region were pleading with the military to come and figure out what these UFOs were that were hurting people. So there was a military investigation that happened. The military crew assigned to it witnessed these things for themselves and took hundreds, they claim hundreds of thousands of photos and video, film video, I thought it'd be film. And it was all turned over to the government, and it was all locked away. Some of those files have since been released. I believe they started being released about 5 to 10 years ago. There's a very active UFO researcher in Brazil. His name is AJ Jabayard, and he used to run a UFO magazine down there too. He maybe still does. But he was very, very active in researching that case and meeting with the government and trying to get those files released, because it's an extremely fascinating case. You have doctor testimony from patients who came in with burn marks on their skin, people who were just absolutely mentally messed up from just the terror that these lights in the sky were causing, like chasing people around and shooting lasers.
Who's a Stranger Things fan? So everyone, yeah, pretty much. So I'm sure some of you have heard about the Montauk Project, which is what Stranger Things was based off of. And this is a whole level of crazy. I can't get into all the details because it's very insane, but I will say this. So Montauk, New York, there is a base there, and it's now called Camp Hero State Park. There is still a radar tower there, and then there's all these weird sealed off entrances, like manholes that have been filled in with cement or they're flooded. And a friend of mine, Christopher Garitano, has been researching the Montauk conspiracy for the good part of 15 years, and he did a documentary called Montauk Chronicles. He interviews Preston Nichols, who's the guy that kind of brought this conspiracy to light. He came forward in, I think it was 1982, and wrote a book that said, hey, I found out I used to be a project manager for this Montauk project, where they used to steal boys off the street and take them to this base, secret underground base, and torture them, basically trying to break their minds so they could mold their minds into being secret spies. He claimed a lot of them had psychic abilities, so they were taking them, and a lot of these were riffraff kids that they thought no one would miss. They would do really awful things that I won't repeat since there are some young people in the audience. And, but they basically were all of this is allegedly, by the way, experimenting with teleportation, stargates. They claimed that all of this stuff they were getting was a lot from alien technology and alien influence. Like the aliens were teaching our government how to manipulate these people's minds so they could be these super soldiers. And they claimed somewhere between 10 to 100 to 300,000 of these kids were taken, and a lot of them died, and they disposed of the bodies. But there are some who claim to have been Montauk boys that have escaped this guy. There's a lot of parallels to Stranger Things. So first off, the idea that they're doing this telekinesis mind experiments on 11 came from there. And then you have the Demogorgon. And that actually came from this thing called the Montauk chair, which was this chair that they would put these psychic boys into that allegedly would, with electromagnetic, manifest what they were thinking. And when they were trying to end this program, they tricked this one guy, Duncan Cameron, into sitting in the chair, and he manifested this hairy, crazy beast, which physically appeared and wrecked the whole base. And that is where the inspiration for that came from. There's a lot of other parallels. And again, this seems so far-fetched that you really have to take it with a grain of salt, obviously. We can't prove this.
All the stuff that happened at Camp Hero is really freaky, really weird, and a lot of, just kind of hearsay is what we have to go on. But there is some documentation out there about Camp Hero and the things that went on there. Really weird experimentation and testing stuff in the nearby region. I don't remember what year it was. It was several years ago now, but it was a weird, and you've probably seen this floating around the internet, and if I had a picture to show you now, you'd probably recognize it. But they dubbed it the Montauk Monster, this weird thing that washed up on a beach and looked really weird. It looked kind of like a half dog, half bird, half something else. It was really weird looking.
A mutant.
And people couldn't figure out what this crazy creature was. And, it was really ascribed to Plum Island, there's an animal disease research center that is in that area, and they do all sorts of crazy biological, just awful testing, and mutating animals and doing all sorts of things. I think it was eventually shut down, but the weird thing about that research facility was it was initially owned by, I think, the Department of Energy or something like that. But in 2012, Homeland Security took it over, and nobody knows what they're doing there. But there's a facility there that Homeland Security took over, and then we get this weird, freaky-looking monster that washes up.
People think it's a raccoon now. That's what the sort of skeptical hypothesis is that its nose had been eaten away, so it looks like it has a beak, but it's really just its skull.
But you can check out that picture. It's really freaky. They call it the Montauk Monster. You'll find it pretty easily. But on the topic of mind control and psychological warfare and all that stuff, there's plenty of government documentation that you can read to find, or easily access, to find out the government's role in all of this. The movie Men Who Stare at Goats, that's not 100%, but it's
remote viewing, yeah.
Based on reality. The CIA was very active in mind control research, and in fact, there are Supreme Court cases that you can read all about that, because they were doing things that were extremely illegal, along the lines of the Montauk stuff with taking homeless people and conducting all sorts of terrible experiments on them,
feeding them LSD and other things. That was MK Ultra, if you ever want to look it up. But yes, there is testimony. And Skinwalker Ranch. Anyone heard of Skinwalker Ranch? A few people. You want to start on that one?
Sure. I mean, just a few weeks ago, Robert Bigelow made the news. I don't know how many watched 60 Minutes, but 60 Minutes did an interview with Robert Bigelow. Robert Bigelow is a private space industry pioneer, and he runs Bigelow Aerospace, doing fantastic things in the private space world. But Robert Bigelow is also very much into UFOs and all things strange. And he made it very loud and clear on 60 Minutes, where he proudly claimed that he knows that extraterrestrials are here on Earth right now walking among us. Now, Robert Bigelow, this isn't the first time he's made that claim. He's always been very proud and open about his belief about UFOs and extraterrestrials. But he's poured millions of his own dollars into actively researching UFOs, Bigfoot, consciousness, all sorts of everything. He founded a scientific organization called NIDS. NIDS doesn't exist anymore, but the National Institute of Discovery Sciences, where he assembled a team of scientists and ex-FBI people to actively investigate cases of the paranormal. And he purchased a ranch in Utah, a location of high strangeness, everything you could possibly imagine, and had NIDS come on the ranch and really block everybody off, wouldn't allow anybody else on the property, and they did a scientific investigation there.
And they found a lot of weird stuff. They had their cameras torn apart. They allegedly found portals to, this is like a really credible scientist and a really respected journalist wrote this book called Hunt for Skinwalker. The family that was living on the ranch sold it to Bigelow because they were experiencing so much paranormal activity in their home, like their cupboards flying open, their groceries flying everywhere, and giant wolves attacking their livestock, and a bunch of other things. So this ranch is on the Ute Reservation in Utah, and it is allegedly the whole area is just ripe with UFO sightings and other monsters.
Bigfoot, and animal mutilations, like everything in the paranormal world happens there. And it's not just confined to that ranch, it's that whole region.
But yeah, so there are lots of different investigations with crazy monster-like stuff, including one of my favorites is the car-munching lizard of Skateboard Swamp, where this kid claims that he was attacked by a lizard man with glowing red eyes and scaly fingers, 3 fingers, that chased him in this old swamp while he was going home from working at a fast food restaurant, and attacked his car, and he managed to escape from him, but he had all these scrape marks down his car, and he showed up and his parents, he's crying, he's very distraught. They call the cops. So the cops are investigating this area, and all of a sudden all these other reports, one from an Air Force guy, start popping up. And there was a case where this old couple said that their car was attacked by something, and literally parts of the car were torn off and like in teeth marks kind of, and they had the police and animal control come out, and they could not identify the bite, so they assume it's this lizard is eating it. On this one, I'm going to go ahead and say I believe this is probably more of a tourism hoax, because now they're kind of given the Roswell thing where everyone comes to see the lizard from Skateboard Swamp, and a lot of people have been caught hoaxing footprints. But there's a lot of stuff that, like, you look at it and the police and other official agencies are actually taking it somewhat seriously and at least coming out to investigate the claims. One of my favorite investigations that Jason and I have done together is on the ghost side at the old Idaho Penitentiary. And we happened to do this on a Friday the 13th, which makes it extra special. But this penitentiary had a lot of history of riots and other things, and it was one of the first places where they were hanging people in Idaho. And there was this man, and I always want to say his name was Edward Snowden, but it's Raymond Snowden, not to be confused with the hacker. He was a real jerk and killed a woman, a mother, when he was out at a bar. And he was sentenced to death by hanging. And he was the first and last person they hung in this one cell block. It was about 12:20 a.m., I think, and his neck didn't break on the way down, so he was suffering for about 15 minutes. So we were in a different cell block that overlooked that one. That one was down the hill. And we were all talking and looking around, and all of a sudden we heard this rattle-shaking boom. Oh, that really echoed in the mic. And what happened was the door from cell block 5, which was the maximum security prison where he was hung, swung shut, and it was this big, heavy metal door. So we make sure nobody is actually down there investigating. Jason, did you catch that on camera? I don't remember if you did or not.
No.
Okay. So 2 people in our group went down to make sure there was nobody in there, and they found it was clear, but then they heard footsteps in there, like running. But they couldn't see anybody, so they came back out to report back. And as they were walking up, we're all looking down the hill at this other building. And right behind them, the huge door goes boom again, like crazy. It was not wind. I don't know if you can explain that.
Yeah, no wind, really heavy metal door. And like we played with it to see like how easily it would move. Nothing was moving that door, but apparently something did.
So we were lucky enough then, this is the other little gem from it, to be in Max like right during the time where his hanging happened. So we were in the gallows. We had been there's the upstairs where there's the door drop, and then you go downstairs and it's the bottom, very appealing looking place. And we were the only people in the building, and we were all quiet, and we're waiting to look at the time. Is this guy gonna materialize or something magical gonna happen? And myself and Jason's wife, Jessica, were the only 2 people that heard this somehow, distinct right above us, a ton of footsteps. And we went up there and nobody was there. So, you know, like I said, we're skeptical and try to be objective. I can't explain what I saw or what I heard, but I'm not going to say for sure that it was something that was paranormal.
Lights. How many here saw the Phoenix Lights? Anybody?
Oh, there we go.
All right, there you go. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Phoenix Lights happened in March of 1997 in Phoenix and Arizona as a whole. But it really is the largest mass UFO sighting in recent history, for sure. But thousands of people all across Arizona saw multiple events that night, but some reports seeing a gigantic craft the size of multiple football fields basically traverse the entire state. You know, low-flying, slow-flying craft. And that was in the news recently, too, because Kurt Russell apparently witnessed it. He's a pilot, and there was, for many years, we knew that some private pilot had radioed it into the tower at Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix. We now know that he, according to him anyway, was the pilot who reported that. But this is something that was witnessed by thousands of people. I certainly saw it. I was a 17-year-old boy and living in the middle of the desert and got a wonderful view of it. I looked up pretty much right outside my house and saw a series of, and again, this is many years ago, I don't pretend to remember details exactly, but I like to say 5 to 7 lights just hovering motionless in the sky, not doing anything, not moving, not making sound, just remained there for, I would estimate, 30 to 45 minutes. This made nationwide and then worldwide news. The governor at the time, Fife Symington, made light of the situation and tried to play it off in the media as a joke. And he said, "You people are taking this way too seriously. You need to move on. Don't worry about it. Stop freaking out. Aliens aren't here." But years later, he admitted that he too witnessed this craft or UFOs, whatever they were. And he was an Air Force pilot in his history, and he said, "I'm very familiar with aircraft, I'm very familiar with things in the sky. What I saw that night was not of this earth." That was the governor of Arizona, and he faced lots of roadblocks when he actively tried as governor to get answers to what happened that night, because they fought, and city council members also, Phoenix city council members fought to get answers from the nearby Air Force base, and they were just shut down at everywhere they went. And then years later, they were given some phony baloney response of, "Oh yeah, by the way, after telling you many times that we didn't have any planes dropping flares that night, guess what? They were just military flares, haha." But the time they provided for that didn't align with the time of the sighting, and it took them years to come up with this explanation. So a lot of things still don't make sense with the Phoenix Lights. There still isn't a definitive answer. I think it's a fantastic case, and it was very much a case of government officials trying to get answers from other government officials and not being able to because they didn't have the need to know or whatever the situation was. With the Phoenix Lights, fantastic mass UFO sighting.
What would you suggest, Jason, in your opinion, is your favorite piece of equipment you feel people should invest in?
No, I don't think people should investigate the paranormal because it's frustrating. It really is. It doesn't matter what equipment you have, you're still not going to have something that's as conclusive as you want, or something that is as definitive proof that you will be able to convince everybody. That's not going to happen. It's frustrating. It doesn't matter how great of camera you have or anything, and I could go outside right now and there could be an amazing spacecraft there, and I could film it with the best camera in the world.
Can't get your camera working. It's too quick.
But, I show it to people, I show it to the news, whoever, and people will say, "Oh, that's Photoshop. Oh, you digitally created that." I mean, there are the roadblocks that exist. But that being said, I'll still say good camera.
Yeah.
Because, and video is preferred because things happen so fast, no matter which of these phenomena you're talking about. But a good camera beats everything, in my opinion.
Okay. I agree, but I will say investing in a really good audio recorder, because not only can you capture witness interviews, which are a huge portion of the investigation, you can have fun trying to catch EVPs, electric voice phenomenon, if you're doing ghost hunts.
That is all for this episode of Spacing Out. Again, ask for your patience during our new learning process, dealing with doing the show not in a studio, doing it normally in different states, but right now in different countries and different continents. So it'll be fun for a while, shake out some bugs, get the show worked out the way we want it to be for you. Remember to visit our website, rogueplanet.tv. That's where you'll find all the strange, all of the news we post about UFOs and related subjects. We're all over social media, so you can find us anywhere. You can find us individually as well. But for Rogue Planet, you can follow us on Twitter at Rogue Planet HQ. We're on Facebook. We've got a new Facebook group. You can join that and continue the discussion. Ideally, continue talking and sharing your opinions about the stories we've talked about on this show, but all things Rogue Planet, that's where you'll be able to go. And individually, the best place to follow me is on Twitter at AceCentric. That's ACECENTRIC.
And you can find me at Maureen Elsberry. That's at MaureenElsberry. Let us know if you liked today's episode by clicking the like button on YouTube and leaving your comments below. Please don't be trolly, you know who you are. Anyways, you can also check out our podcast Unknown by downloading it on iTunes or by visiting rogueplanet.tv/unknown. Thanks again for joining us today. I'm Maureen Elsberry.
And I'm Jason McClellan. We will see you in the future.